Hello, this is part 3 of the presentation on the Introduction to Blended Learning for DC Virgo. By now, you should have been to the Padlet twice. The first time to talk about the influence that students can have over the time, pace, and place of the learning. And in the second part of the presentation, I asked you to consider what some of the challenges and opportunities of your specific context may be of blended learning in your specific context. In this presentation, which is a little bit longer, I'm going to actually start talking through some of those different models of blended learning so you can see what those are. Once this presentation is over, you'll be going into the Canvas site and exploring some more about the models through the videos that I provided for you, and then thinking yourself about what some interesting takeaways you have from those and what models might work in your own classroom or in your building. So structured blended learning, if you think about this image, there's a blender and we're mixing everything together. We've got connected learning, online learning. We've got the global connections, which is hidden over here beneath my webcam. Project-based learning, face-to-face learning, all these devices, these icons, of course, that represent things to us as well. And blended learning, of course, makes you think that we're going to mix them all together and voila, out comes the best smoothie we've ever had. Not, of course, that works that way. And there is really a lot of different ways to structure blended learning so that you can feel more in control of the classroom, feel more in control of the students' learning, but also so that you could provide those touch points for your students. And again, it's very much contextual. It's what your students need is what you build. But as I start talking about the models, and the language I'm using for these different models is the language from the DPI document. And you'll find if you did a quick Google search that there are different ways of representing what these models of blended learning might look like. But it's not really the name or the designator or the words that are chosen of the type of blended learning that's important. What's really important is why you chose that specific format. And it may very well be that what works for one aspect of your content, you may need a different kind of model of blended learning for the next set of content that you're covering with your students. Or something that you do in the beginning of the school year when you're building community and making connections, you may shift into a different kind of blended learning model as the school year goes on and you're learning more about your students, their individual mastery of subjects. So I want us to really continue to think about the why, and we'll come back to that at the end of the presentation. So DPI goes through this long list, and they really only give you one sentence. No explanation, no detail, nothing really that explains what that means. So I'm going to take just a couple minutes to talk through each of these. And again, like I said, the videos provide you some ways to go into and learn more about any one specific one that you want to learn about. So station rotation. If you think about many traditional elementary classrooms and maybe sometimes even middle school classrooms where students are moving around between stations. So in elementary classrooms where I've volunteered with my own children, students may be working independently but listening to reading on the computers, and then another group of students may be working with some scholastic materials and kind of making notes. And another group of students may be meeting with the teacher as a small group to do some activities together. Some people may be working independently at their desks on worksheets or on packets or on an art activity. There might be all different, and you work through those stations as you go through a period of time or the whole day. So a station rotation for blended learning is basically the same thing, is that you're moving on a fixed schedule between face-to-face and online instruction. So students are having face-to-face instruction that's teacher-led, and then they might be working in collaborative activities, and then they're doing computer-based instruction. And it may be that your class has been broken into 3 parts, and so part of the students, a third of the group, is meeting with the teacher, a third is working on collaborative activities, and a third is in computer-based instruction, and then you shift to the next, and then you shift again. So station rotation for blended learning is really rotating through different stations, different groups of content, different activities, some of which will use an online learning as the mechanism, and some of which will not. Truly what station rotation means. You'll see lots of examples of station rotation if you look for videos or for images or pictures of what blended learning might look like. Because you can see kids engaged in different types of activities around the room. This makes for a nice picture. Flex rotation, which is, again, this is the definition that DPI provides, is having that online instruction being the primary focus. So we all have a specific amount of things that we're doing that's online, whether we're in the face-to-face classroom or at home or learning in the media center, but we all have the online instruction is really our focus. Whether it's because we have a specific curriculum program that we're using or because our time in the building is limited. And then when we are in the building or are together or we are not learning online, that's being supplemented by small groups, by tutoring, by interventions, by pulling people out to work on a specific skill set, especially if the online curriculum or the online instructional practices that you're engaging in are ones that give you those formative assessment checkpoints. So you can kind of see where things are and how students are going and getting certain content. You might want to pull some out to give some more enrichment or deep one-on-one or small group enrichment. So that's really kind of it's different than station, because in station we're doing large group, we're doing teacher-led instruction, we're doing computer-based instruction, we're doing collaborative activities. In flex rotation, we're pretty much online for the majority or working in the technology primarily, and then supplementing with what's needed outside of that. This next three categories, and I've actually reorganized them from the DPI document, but these next three categories are those that I would consider like really completely online, or thinking about that. So live distance instruction would be if you have half of your students or some of your students in the classroom and some of your students online, and you are teaching them all at the same time. So at the university for the fall semester, because of COVID-19, we've been asked to make sure that if we are teaching face-to-face, that if there's any point in time where our students cannot join us face-to-face because of COVID, because they're on quarantine, because they haven't gotten their positive test results back, because they're home with family members who may be quarantined, whatever the case may be, that they should be able to attend on-site. They should be able to attend virtually. So we'll set that up by Zoom. So I might be in the classroom teaching to the face-to-face students and then portrayed over the webcam, and they can watch me and participate on Zoom. That's kind of what live distance instruction looks like. Online driver is when the course is online and the teacher is just checking in. So if we were in remote learning only, then all of my instruction may be online, and a lot of it may be self-paced as students work through modules, and then there's structured check-in points where I'm checking in as the teacher face-to-face or over the phone or over a live chat in Zoom, whatever the case may be, to kind of see where things are going. And I might create a mini lecture, record myself through Screencast-O-Matic like I am for you, and present that to students. But primarily this course is really online and the teacher's checking in. Online lab is what happens sometimes in our schools when, so for example, my daughter will be taking a math class that isn't offered in her middle school, and so she'll be doing that through virtual public school. So she may be in a lab engaging in her online learning, and then there's just somebody who's there supervising her, not instructing her, not teaching her, not a content expert necessarily, but just to kind of make sure if there's anything technical that goes on, etc. But the online teacher is the teacher for her. So those are still blended though, because there is, again, back to our definition of blended, some mix of classroom or building level interaction and some mix of online learning. But in these instances, the online learning really is the driver, as the word says. And then there's this idea of a face-to-face driver, is that we are primarily doing our face-to-face work as we normally do our face-to-face work, but we supplement with online learning in a case-by-case method. So if someone needs further enrichment, then perhaps they're working deeper into content in order to reach mastery while the rest of the class is exploring something else. If someone is ready to move on and move beyond where the bulk of the class is, then perhaps they may be doing that additional work moving forward with the next set of standards or the next content in an online space. So the difference, of course, with this is that it truly is we continue face-to-face. Face-to-face is primary, not online being primary, and then we are supplementing our face-to-face with online. So Online Driver was primarily online and supplementing that with individual tutoring or small groups or enrichment, but face-to-face is that as needed case-by-case measure, we might be having students who are moving into other things in the online space or needing further enrichment. So this picture, I think, shows face-to-face driver because this is what a lot of elementary classrooms look like, but this also is another good example of a picture of a station rotations where you can picture the students who are at the teacher's desk will then move to the computers, they'll move to the next desk in the back, they'll move to the other set of computers. There's the shifting through stations throughout. So these are the definitions that the DPI document explains for those blended learning aspects of what the different models might look like. And they are primarily the same as are represented in the literature. What I've done for you in the Canvas site is provide you with Clayton Christensen's kind of working document of what the primary models of definitions for blended learning are, and give you a shorter, more comprehensive than DPI's definition, explanation of what those are, with some links, etc. And then, as I've said, I've curated some videos that show you these models in action or provide more explanation from people who've actually engaged in those specific models in their individual school contexts. I would be remiss if I did not remind us that the why is the most important. So think back to what blended learning is. It's a mix of online and classroom. Provides structure and opportunity for students to influence the time, the pace, and the place of their own learning. We can think about the benefits that provides our students, and I asked you to think about some of those in the Padlet. We can, of course, think of the challenges and the things that we're going to need to work on in order to make sure it happens and works well and efficiently and effectively and everybody's meeting their student learning outcomes. But I want us to remember the why. So when we are providing opportunities for our students to learn and engage in this different way, what does that do? How can we change? How can we provide them those opportunities? What skills are we building? Critical thinking skills, choice skills, time management skills. We're also teaching our students that it's okay to really want to go deep into a topic. If they really want to explore more, sometimes blended learning lets us get that further depth to a content. And it's also okay I don't really want to do math right now, so I'm going to do math later, because I have some choice over the time within which I'm going to engage in that content. Doesn't mean I don't do it, but I get to pick a little bit, have some more influence as well. So I do want to, as you're thinking about blended learning, as you're really thinking about what this means for your own classroom and your own school building, don't forget the why. Why do we want to focus on blended learning? Part of the reason we want to focus on blended learning is because we have to do it because we have COVID-19 and we're not all going to be in the building all day, every day, unfortunately. But there are other whys to it as well. Before COVID, blended was a very well researched and defined and supported avenue for student learning. So what is the why for you? What is the why for your school? What is the why for your classroom? What is the why for your kids? And as you're thinking through those different models of blended learning, you can also think about that question. Would this work for my kids? Doesn't really meet my why I'm in it, why I'm thinking about it, why I care about blended learning, or why I want to try something. I'm not going to do it that way because that model doesn't fit my why. So keep that in mind as you're going through. So your next steps are to go into the Canvas module, pick 3 of the videos from my list There's, again, as I said, you can always watch more. There's additional foundational resources there. And after you do that, please respond in the discussion board. The prompt is there for you in Canvas. And then I want you to strategize some specific activities and practices for your own classroom. Respond in the Padlet for that. And then go back to the Padlet conversations from the previous presentations. Don't hesitate to let me know if you have questions.